This is an introduction to the ipfs-site-mirror. This is one of the tools that is presented at uncensorablepublishing.com. If you want to go to uncensorablepublishing.com, you can see all the ways there are these video tutorials on how censorship on the internet happens, what you can do to fight it, how to build a website that is naturally censorship resistant. What ipfs-site-mirror does is it lets people easily mirror other websites that are built to use IPFS, the Interplanetary File System. So by following this video, if you see a site that you want to support and that might be under attack from censorship, you can follow the steps in this video to set up a mirror and help fight censorship of those sites. So I'll give a quick high-level overview, and then I'll jump into the actual how you install, configure, and run this software. So again, to recap on what this is it's an extension of the information at uncensorablepublishing.com. So I encourage you to check this out if you haven't, and watch the videos at this site before you watch this video. Here are some examples of sites that use the technology at uncensorablepublishing.com. This is wallet.fullstack.cash. It's a Bitcoin Cash web wallet. It also supports tokens. And if you scroll down to the footer, you can see all the different ways in which you can access this web app. There's the clear web URL there. There's a Tor onion address so that you can use it privately over Tor. And then there is this IPFS hash, which is the current implementation that is also presented here in the clear web. And then finally there's this Bitcoin Cash address, which takes you to the memo.cash profile. So this is actually information coming from the Bitcoin Cash blockchain, and this is an address on the Bitcoin Cash blockchain, and it's used to track the changing IPFS hash of this website. So in this video, installing an uncensorable web server, this talks about how to set up a web server for a site that will simultaneously broadcast the site over Tor and IPFS and the clear web, and it will update a Bitcoin Cash address like this. And so what the ipfs-site-mirror does is you configure it to point at a Bitcoin Cash address, and it will automatically update itself as this address gets new IPFS hashes. So for example, if this was the current web page when it was changed, or let's say this is the current web page, when it changed, the hash changed, and that hash was published to the address. And what ipfs-site-mirror does is it monitors the Bitcoin Cash address. It will detect these changes, retrieve the hash, retrieve the content from the IPFS network, and then start serving that over IPFS and the clear web. So that if the server that's actually, say the server that's serving this web wallet app was taken down, a mirror could still serve this app over IPFS. And so the more people who do this, prevent the ability, it makes several targets, and it's like a game of whack-a-mole, and governments and entities that would want to censor content simply cannot attack a large target like that's decentralized around the world. And so this phenomenon is known as the Streisand effect, and this is how this technology taps into the Streisand effect to fight censorship. So here's another example of a website, message.fullstack.cash. You can go here to send and read messages, which lets you send end-to-end encrypted email and files to anyone with a Bitcoin Cash address using IPFS. And again, all these sites that are published by the Permissionless Software Foundation and fullstack.cash have used this technology, and they'll always have a clear web, a Tor, and an IPFS address, as well as a Bitcoin Cash address for this site mirror to follow and replicate the site. Okay, so that's what ipfs-site-mirror is and what it does and kind of how it works. Let's get into how we set it up and get it running. So the code lives on GitHub. under the Permissionless Software Foundation GitHub group, and then the repository is called ipfs-site-mirror. And I've got it pulled up here. It's the same URL. And if you scroll down, there's a README, and I'm going to cover most of what's in this README, but it talks about a development and a Docker or production. So you can run this using, it's a Node.js JavaScript app, so that's the development part. I'll show you how to run that using Node.js and PM2. If you're not a JavaScript developer and that doesn't sound fun to you, but you can also use the Docker container, which is very popular for running programs in any language. So I'll show how to run that as well. And this is MIT licensed and open source, so feel free to hack on it and fork it and do whatever you want with it, including charge money for it. That's totally fine. So I've got a fresh computer pulled up here, and to install this, you simply copy the GitHub URL, and it's git clone and then paste the URL. So it's going to go out to GitHub and it's going to get the repository. And then I'm going to show the way of installing the development version first using PM2. So I'm using Node.js version 12, but you can use 14 or above. My current version of NPM is 6.4. And so to install the dependencies, I just run npm install. And this might take a minute. And once the dependencies are installed, you can start the app with npm start. So what it's doing right now is it's spinning up an IPFS node. It reached out to the Bitcoin Cash blockchain, found the latest IPFS hash recorded to that Bitcoin Cash address, and now it's downloading the site from the IPFS network. And when it finishes downloading it, it will serve that website over the clear web, but more importantly, it will begin sharing the website over IPFS. So you now have a copy of the website that you are sharing on the network, and you are actively fighting censorship. So I'm going to stop that right now. Out of the box like this, what it does is it follows this Bitcoin Cash address for uncensorablepublishing.com, and it replicates uncensorablepublishing.com. What I'm going to show you now is how to customize it to point at any website that follows this scheme. So that would include wallet.fullstack.cache, message.fullstack.cache, Tor list, and other websites that the Permissionless Software Foundation puts out, but also your own website that follows this same publishing scheme that is presented at uncensorablepublishing.com. So there is only one real file that you need to edit in order to customize this app. In the development mode, you go into the config folder, environment, and then common. This is a common file that is used in all environments. This address right here matches this address right here. So that's the address that it's focused on. So if I wanted to, say, mirror wallet.fullstack.cache instead, I would copy this Bitcoin Cash address and I would put it right here and replace that with it, and then it would mirror wallet.fullstack.cache instead of uncensorablepublishing.com. That's really the only change you need to make. There are a few other, like this is the ClearWeb port that it serves the ClearWeb website over. These are this is the TCP port for the IPFS node that it starts, and this is the WebSocket node, or the WebSocket port. For the IPFS node. So these generally you don't need to change those unless you really know what you're doing. This is really the only thing that you need to change is this address right here. Now that's for the development version, which like I said is here. And what I like to do when I run the development version is instead of running it directly on the command line like this, what I try to do instead is install PM2, and you can install that with, I'm on Linux, so I have to use the sudo command. On a Mac you wouldn't. npm install G for global PM2, and that's a process manager. And that will run this app in the background so that when you log out, it will keep running. And so I'm going to install this real quickly, and then I'm going to show you how to set this up with PM2. Okay, with PM2 installed, you can bring it up with PM2 list. So there's nothing listed here because I'm not running it, I just installed it. So instead of running npm start, I can run pm2 start index.js. And then I can see it running by going pm2 logs. So these are the logs, just ignore this top part. And in fact, I can bring up more logs. If I go pm2 list, I can now see this running in the pm2 list. I can go pm2 logs index. Okay, that's all. But basically, it found the hash, it downloaded it, it is now serving the website at this port. The IPFS node is also sharing the content over IPFS. And then pm2 startup is how I would, and then I would run this command. This is so that it automatically would start if the computer rebooted. And then pm2 save. So now the site mirror is running with PM2, and it will automatically restart if this computer's rebooted. So I went very quick there because learning PM2 is kind of outside the scope, but hopefully you can take what I just showed, dig into it a little deeper, if this is the way that you want to do it. If you're not a JavaScript developer and you're uncomfortable using Node, let me now show you how to do the Docker. So I showed how to install it, I showed how to configure the address for development, and then how to run it in a development version with PM2. Now I'm going to show the Docker, or production, what a lot of people will refer to Docker as like the production run. So same repository, you do the same thing, git clone. The difference is that instead of going into the config env common folder or file, you will go into the production and then change this common file. This is the one that's used, and it's exactly the same. It's got the same ports, it's the same idea, you just change the address. It's just that this is the file that's used for the Docker container rather than the other file. And so you would just change that address and then run docker compose build. So that's going to build the Docker container, which is going to take a minute, and I'll let this build. Okay, so that Docker container has been built with the docker compose build command. Now that it's been built, I can run it with docker compose up, and then I'm going to do -d, which daemonizes it, makes it run in the background. Okay, and now if I do docker ps, I can see it running, and I can go docker logs follow web server, and this has the same information. It started an IPFS node. This is the IPFS address. It reached out to the Bitcoin Cash blockchain and found the hash for the site. It is starting to download it. When that download is complete, it will mount it, begin sharing the content over IPFS, and it will also begin serving the website over the clear web. And so this is just an alternate way to do the same thing. So that is how you use ipfs-site-mirror. Again, I recommend reading the README. That basically covers all the content that I covered in this video. And before I sign off, I just want to point out that uncensorablepublishing.com is maintained by the Permissionless Software Foundation. So if you care about privacy, free speech, and engaging in economic activity, I encourage you to check out psfoundation.cash. Watch the video, see what we're all about. We're a community of JavaScript developers and just libertarian-minded people that care about privacy, free speech, and economic activity. And we build tools around that, and we are looking to grow our community. So we hope you will consider joining us. Cheers.